so in this setting is what we really wanted to do for our congregation and for our audience and anyone who's listening is to continue this conversation on the series that we're currently doing on the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So we wanted to, each week after the sermon, sit down as a staff, welcoming other people in potentially as well, and continue the conversation and say, you know what, this might be stuff that's additional to the sermon that was preached, but it'll be something for our audience that says, hey, how did you guys personally begin to live this stuff out? How did it actually impact your life and make a change? Because often in a sermon, we don't have time to go into all the details of how it's impacted our life. Maybe we can share a story or two, but this is an opportunity for us to dive a little bit deeper into, hey, how has this actually impacted us? So the people who have questions of like, what do I do with this? Maybe here's a few examples for them to say, okay, that makes sense. I can do something like that. And so after this past week of talking about this idea of the problem of hurry and identifying the problem, we decided to just engage in 2 questions to be able to continue this conversation. And so my name's Matt. I'm the student ministry director here.
John, I'm lead pastor.
I'm Roddy. I'm the pastor of operations.
I'm Jeremy.
Ministry.
I'm the pastor of operations, unlike Roddy.
I'm the pastor of ministries.
Well, there you go. So, all right, there might be a little bit of humor in this episode. So, all right. So, question number 1. It says, when did you first come to the realization that you lived a hurried-filled lifestyle?
So generally, I don't live a hurried life. I'm pretty regimented in my structure. I have a lot of rhythms built into my life. But a few years back, I was on an extended break here at the church, and there's 2 places I hurry: when I'm driving and when I'm shopping. And most of my life, I'm not in a hurry, but those 2 places. And so it happened to be an afternoon, and I was in Dick's Sporting Goods, and I had to get something, and I was in a hurry to get something. And my wife was trying to slow me down, and I was disregarding her. And I walked very aggressively behind someone who was about 30 years older than me. And they said, "Oh, excuse me, you must be in a hurry." And they moved to the side, and I went racing past, and my wife is walking behind me, just shaking her head like that. So that was a reminder to me, like, okay, maybe I was in just a little bit of a hurry if I'm running up behind someone in a store trying to get past them.
Yeah, pretty accurate. What would you guys say?
Go ahead.
So, I don't look at myself as hurried. I don't think of myself as hurried until, this past week. So, I think in general, I live a pretty relaxed life, but there's times when things build up on me and I can just kind of lose sight of that. Like, I went to Weaver's store. You don't know this, Matt. I went to Weaver's store this past week, and I needed new shorts because my shorts that I was wearing were too big. They're just too big.
So you shrunk.
I shrunken.
Yeah,
I shrunk. Yeah, so, and through the process of shrinking, I needed to get some new clothes. So I went to Weaver's store. I grabbed shorts off the shelf. I went into the dressing room, and I changed. I took my shoes off, put my new shorts on. These work great. Took them off, put my shoes on, grabbed all of my stuff, and walked out of the dressing room.
In a hurry.
Walking down the aisle in Weaver's store as I dropped my wallet out of my back short pocket. And then I realized that I'm holding 3 pair of shorts, and I left the dressing room in my underwear. So I was standing in Weaver's store in my ice cream cone underwear.
I was going to say, the ice cream cone is the key part. So
my ice cream cone underwear, and I'm like, how did I do this? And I had to decide at that moment, do I put my pants on here? And I felt that I would.
One there.
I turned around, and as I turned around, there's a Mennonite lady that's standing there looking at me, and she's beside herself. And then I went to the changing room, put my shorts on. Oh my gosh! And so I put my shorts on, and then I came back out and I looked at her and I said, "This will be our secret." So I went and paid, and now I can't go back into Weaver's. But it's weird. I don't always struggle with hurry. But there's times that I do. And when I do, I tend to become careless. I make mistakes.
Yeah.
I can step on people emotionally or whatever. So, it's a continual realization for me. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what would you say?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say that, I mean, for me, there's parts of my life that have definitely slowed down with my job change. So changing of professions, my previous job would have been a much greater story in regards to hurry. I definitely was one who took on more than I could chew, as you were talking about this past, just yesterday, having way too many things to complete in too less of time, and had to make those commitments or decisions about, am I careless, or am I this, or am I that, and now what do I cut out? I would say that I definitely have slowed down over the last number of years, but at the same time, Karen and I she's read the book, I've listened to the book, we listened to the sermons from John Mark Comer, and one of the things that we said we wanted to try to do this year was have a Sabbath. We haven't gotten to that concept, but we'll talk about that concept.
Yep.
And so we knew we could not commit to a whole day as a family, right? But we did say we wanted to do these things, and we said, well, all right, we're going to institute Sunday family dinners. And that was going to be our day or our moment to try to get everybody back together, because we do have multiple kids and multiple activities running in multiple different directions, for those of you that have young families. And I will tell you that I believe that we have had family Sunday dinner once since the beginning of the year. So there are definitely still things about our life that are hurried and have not been able to slow down. But at the same time, there have been many things in our life that have slowed down. And I'd just say for me, the ability for me to attend a lot of my kids' sporting events. I've attended more of their events over the last 2 years than I ever had. Yes, that fills my schedule, but my schedule now has capacity and has margin to allow me to do that. Before, I did not have margin, as you talked about before, to be able to attend those games. So my life feels busy, but there's parts of it for me that have moved into the good hurry, where I have a lot to do, but I have I have not enough time to be able to complete it. But with 4 kids and activities and school, yes, we live a very full, scheduled, and busy lifestyle, and there are still pieces of it that we need to continue to work out of our schedule in order to be able to institute some other things so that we can continue to be better at our own emotional health, family connection times, relational connection times, and obviously connection times with God.
Yeah.
I got another one real quickly, Matt. So we moved into a new neighborhood 2.5 years ago. Now it was in the middle of COVID.
Yep.
But I didn't really have the time or bandwidth to meet my neighbors. I just didn't. I mean, I had too many other things going on, and it's interesting. So this summer, I've just started to have enough space that when one of them is walking by or out in the yard, I can walk out, have a couple-minute conversation. I was just going over with my wife the names of the neighbors that I know whose backyards are connected to ours. And I was like, okay, that's that one's name, and that's that one's name. And I chased that one's dog, and I looked at the tag on the dog. And now I know that wife's name. I didn't know it before. And, so I was kind of going around. So it's just interesting. That was a signal for me that my life was too full, that I couldn't even discover the names of the people who we shared a fence with.
Yeah.
So that was just another simple illustration.
So, if you see them, will you just literally go out on the porch? Like, if they're walking, you just, hey, how you doing? I'm John. Like, how do you do that?
How do I do that? Oh, I go out and talk to them. I go out and engage them or interact with them. Yeah. So, and I have to gauge whether or not they want to talk. So they have their head down and they're not looking up. You don't want to disturb their own mission,
John.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, that takes margin. That takes the ability to say, okay, you know what, I've got 5 minutes, and you know what, I see a neighbor walking by, so I can stop and have a conversation. And for me, I know you guys have your stories. I think for me it was a little more of a harsh reality, because I think it started for me honestly when I started having panic attacks, to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. And I remember sending text messages to my brother who's an MD, and I'm like, dude, I think I'm having a heart attack right now. I'm like, I can't breathe. I'm like, my limbs are tingly. I'm like, I'm freaking out right here. And he's like, you're not having a heart attack. He's like, you're having a panic attack right now. And just like in that moment thinking like, why am I panicking? And I think it was because I had come out of my college years, and through college, every second of my time was filled. And I had my schedule all regimented out, and it was a great life. I loved it. It was so much fun. I had such great connections and was in the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week and feeling great. But I was so used to that pell-mell lifestyle constantly going that all of a sudden when I got out of college and I got into my first job, and for the first couple months it was, hey, just learn the job, just observe, don't do much. And I'm forced to slow down. My body did not know how to slow down, and I basically crashed. And all of a sudden I find myself in a therapy office going, I don't know what my brain is doing. I don't know what my body is doing right now, and I'm kind of freaking out in all of this. And it was a pretty harsh reality of, I had lived a hurried lifestyle. There were things in my past that I hadn't dealt with, and it all just came to just a big explosion. And then I find myself in doctor's offices, in therapy, going, what is going on with me right now? And I still remember one of the guys that I sat down with, his name was Chris, and I remember him looking at me, and Jeremy, to your point of Sabbath, he looked at me, he was like, when's the last time you ever Sabbath? And I was like, dude, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever tell you I've actually Sabbathed before. And he was like, start now. Mm-hmm. And I remember him sitting down with me and saying, let's build a Sabbath period. And I had the bandwidth as a single guy at the time to say, you know what, I could set aside a full day of Saturday to be able to do my Sabbath rest. And it was the most impactful thing for me in that period to help me get to a place where I was a much healthier version and could handle some capacity again and some more responsibility. And so I think for all of our stories, it looks different, whether it's a humorous moment like yours, Roddy, of like, oh my gosh, I walked out of a dressing room in my underwear, to just meeting neighbors, lifestyle change, but family, 4 kids, to health concerns and things like that. But at a certain point, it all will come to a head where we realize, you know what, I don't have margin, and my life is way too stinking hurried. And then it begs the question, what are we going to do about it? And so kind of jumping to our next question, because I think it goes along with it, as I got to talk yesterday about this idea of problem of hurry and what does it look like, we then gave out that survey of the 10 signs that you're moving through life too fast, just as one method of helping somebody see that, hey, you know what, I've got some hurry in my life and I need to do some work. So as we kind of took the survey, what stood out? Was there a particular one that stood out? How did you kind of respond to the survey? Like, what did it show you?
Yeah, I mean, I went through the survey, Matt, and I would say that, before I give you my results, I'd like to have my loved one fill it out to see what that result is, because mine probably about,
do you have a pen?
I would say maybe about 50%, but they might have a different answer. But I think the one that really stuck out to me really talked about, I think it was called insensitivity, or what. But basically, when somebody talks to you and you are quick with them, you're defensive, you're short, you're curt, then that is something that I know people around me that they would say. My wife would definitely say, my kids would definitely say that they'll ask me a simple question and not understand fully my response to them. They will not understand why I'm being defensive, or I've been told that sometimes my reaction doesn't match what the situation holds. Mm-hmm. And that part of it is something that for me I've been trying to work on, but that's inside. There's something going on. There's a hurriedness. There's a anxiety. There is something that is not settling. We just had, last month I walked in the house and, we needed to grill dinner, and I'm usually the one that grills dinner, and that turned into a very, very bad scenario because I didn't know exactly what was happening. I didn't get all the information that I wanted. I snapped at Micah, had to apologize to him. Then the next day I came back and asked Kara, and then she gave me a list of things, and you did not respond well, and the kids were completely shocked as to why is Dad so, frustrated and so upset when, in this 15-minute period of time where I walk in the door and then we're trying to sit down to have dinner, but yet my interaction with them did not match what was going on. And so that definitely is something that stood out to me in regards to the survey, and that would hit home that there's still some things I need to continue to work on, though I'm making progress in in some of these areas are.
So can I ask you a follow-up question
Absolutely.
on that, Jerry? So one of the things I know that I experience with you, and I think especially as guys, this would be true. So when we get a task in our head, kind of tunnel vision, right? We got our head down, we're focused, we're going here. That's all we think, and just that thing. And so, what's the difference between just you're kind of focused on something, you're intense in that, versus you're preoccupied and you're irritable versus you're just focused? What's the difference between how you respond in those moments? When your focus on the task gets disrupted, and when you're irritable because you got too many things going and you can't be present with any of them.
Yeah, I mean,
does that make sense? The difference between those.
I think it does make a little sense. At least I hope it does in what you're asking. I mean, what I would say, John, is when I'm focused on a task and I get interrupted, I would say that oftentimes I feel like I have a little bit of a bandwidth to at least give 30 seconds to a minute and
just to engage.
To engage, and then say, hey, I'm really busy, I can't handle that right now, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas sort of that other scenario where I am a little bit task-oriented, but I have to I'm supposed to get dinner done. But at the same time, unlike a task that I'm working on and I've already been in it, when you walk in and it's a new situation and there's many things that are happening, especially in our house where you got 7 different people all speaking at one time, I guess I didn't do a great job of deciphering the information and what was happening. Okay. So in one area, you're kind of focused. It is a little bit of a scenario where it's settled and I feel I can at least hopefully respond more appropriately. Whereas when you walk in, and I don't want to say it's chaos, but it's a busier atmosphere, and you've only got so much time to get a certain thing done. You're trying to meet certain needs, and sometimes I don't read that room well. The more people, the harder it is for me to read that scenario.
That's where irritability would come in.
Right, that's where irritability would come out. Correct,
okay.
And what that would look like.
Well, when you have margin in your life, you're able to put your task on pause.
Yes.
So you can engage people.
Yeah, no, that's
right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have margin, people become a nuisance. Yeah. They are not. They're an interruption. I gotta get this done.
I literally just heard you like 30 minutes ago. You were coming down the stairs and you were talking with someone and you're like, hey, you know what? Like, meetings are important, but people are more important. So let's go talk. And it's an example of like, hey, you know what? I've got a task, but I can put that on pause for a moment to sit down with somebody and say, hey, this is more important here to care for someone who clearly is in need of something and has come to you for help. And so it's that time where you can say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to get irritated because, oh my gosh, you interrupted me and now I've got to pause and I'll have to come back to it. And all of a sudden you find yourself just really heated, but instead you can say, hey, this is the priority. This is more important. It goes to what I said yesterday. Like Jesus, in those moments, he would I think of when the friends lowered the paralyzed man down through the roof, and Jesus is in the middle of teaching, and I think about all the people that were in the room as like stuff started falling from the ceiling, and all of a sudden they see this commotion. They're probably like, seriously, guys, we're trying to listen to this guy over here. You're like, what are these idiots doing? Like they're nuts. Like this is crazy, and yet. At the same time, Jesus is probably sitting there going, this is interesting. This is cool. Well, let's meet a need and stuff. And he's able to just pause in the moment and say, this is wild. There's a dude coming down through the roof on a mat and his friends are just lowering him in. But hey, here's a moment for incredible ministry when some of the other people might have been like, look, I came here to hear Jesus. Maybe I came from a long ways away and you're interrupting this. And he's like, here's the priority.
The interesting thing about that, Matt, is in the scripture, the story that's included is not what Jesus was teaching. It's when Jesus stopped teaching and took the time with people. That's what was included in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the story that was included. So I think that making people a priority is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And because people matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know for me personally, like, the part on there that gets me, I'm like, is the out of order priorities. I'm like, so often when I get hurried, when I get a break from that hurry, my priorities are not what they should be. It's, hey, you know what? Like, honestly, I'm like, I'm going to sit on the couch and I just want to watch a show. Granted, is watching a show a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. But when instead I should be, you know what, get in the Word, or should spend time with Rachel, or something like that, something that is more meaningful, or even just get outside and go for a walk, enjoy a good day rather than just sitting on the couch and just vegging. For me, I'm like, that's what I'll go to when I've been in a season of kind of intense hurry, rather than something that's really going to kind of fill me and give me some more life kind of in my spirit. And so I know for me, that's kind of the one that stands out the most. But
What about you, Ronnie?
I haven't had time to take this yet.
Okay, well, then I'll
That
talk
was a
about
joke.
it, and
That
you
was,
can
that
think
was a joke.
Okay. I figured I'll do it, and then
So,
you can do it.
no,
while I'm
so
talking, so.
I think I have experienced all of these.
Sure.
Probably not workaholism. That usually doesn't become a problem for me. But I think the big one for me is probably the same one: out of order priorities. I can sacrifice my family for it's that inability to say no to what I feel is. I sacrifice those closest to me. And then the other one that is really part of is lack of care for your body. And escapist behaviors probably go together for me. When I get really busy, my stress level goes up. I'm a stress eater, and I will just consume food that's not good for me, and then I can put on weight really, really easy. And then when you put on weight really, really easy, you stop taking care of yourself, and so that's been a constant battle for me. So having to really make sure my priorities are in order, and sometimes my priorities need to include things like I need to make sure that I'm taking care of me. I need to make sure that there's so many demands that are on my life that if I don't take care of myself physically, it's going to impact myself spiritually. It's going to impact every area of my life. So so that's been a big one for me to get straightened out. Yeah, for sure.
I would say that maybe that lack of care for your body in a little bit different way, Matt. For much of my life, I had this capacity to just go and go and go and go and do and do and do and do. And I would never feel like that I was at the end, but my body would crash,
Yeah.
And so because of some internal work that I've done over the last couple of years, now I'm attuned to the fact that I don't have this unlimited capacity. I have this tank.
Yeah.
And when the tank gets down, and that's when I think the irritability, when the tank is down and there's nothing left, but there's still more to do. You know what I mean? So that's the too much to do and the time to do it. So there's this emotional factor where when you run out of gas and there's nothing left, and then you get engaged in those ways or pushed in those ways, so that's almost a reaction to being empty on the inside because I had too much and I've run too hard too fast. So it's almost a reaction to your body. You just don't have the emotional capacity to handle those things. So so I think for me, I've been moving into this space of being attuned to what's happening internally inside of me, which I was looking down the list just trying to figure out, is there one of these that it fits? It seems to fit under that care for the body almost in a very different way for me. And so I've got to hit pause, I've got to get away, I've got to be by myself, got to do those things that recharge the battery, because otherwise I can't re-engage in the next thing. And if I'm that far depleted, either your body's going to shut down physically, you're going to get sick. Why am I sick? I'm sick again. Why am I sick again? Well, because the body says, no more, you're done.
Yeah.
Or you recognize that and you say, I'm done, and I have to hit pause. So it's a combination of those things, I think, that are things that I'm becoming more and more attuned to and aware of.
For sure. And I think that's the point of this survey. It's just to help you to take a look at your life and say, you know what, I'm going to take stock of where I'm at, the things that I do well, the things that I don't do well, how my body responds, how my mind responds, so that hopefully you can see, all right, you know what, maybe it's not all the time, but when I get in these hurried places in my life, these are the things that start to rise to the surface. That as the tank lowers, these things start to increase and rise. And we hopefully realize that as I'm running out of energy, I don't want to increase in my insensitivity. That's not good. That's not going to impact anybody in a positive way. And so just helping to gain some realization of this is the person that in some sense I become when I am so hurried, and hopefully helping us to see that, hey, there is a better way to go about this life, so that as we do get busy, because Jeremy, as you said, when you got kids, when you've got a family, when you're working a job, there are times in your life where things are just busy and you cannot avoid that. But how can you avoid getting to the point where you're so hurried that you then become a different person, and the people around you are like, that's not what Jesus looks like, and I'm not a huge fan of that person. And when we get to that point, I think we all realize it, because the other people around us begin to point that out, and then it's like, uh-oh, I made some mistakes. Now I gotta start apologizing to people for it. So, but yeah, thanks guys for jumping in. As I said, we're going to do this each week after each week of this series to just continue to dive into the subject that we're talking about for this particular week. And we're excited to be able to do this, to continue the conversation and just give some practical life advice and experience to help you guys as well as us continue to identify the hurried places in our lives. And as the book says, to ruthlessly eliminate those so that we can live a more fulfilling lifestyle that Jesus has for those of us who have a relationship with him. So
if you weren't there on Sunday and you didn't get the survey, check the weekly email. It will be in there along with a great story from Matt.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, take care, guys.